This is Gemara Kesubos Daf Ayin of all the learning for this month. The month of Elul has been generously sponsored by a close friend of the Daf as an incredible Lezchot Neshama for Reyzel Basra Meir Mir Tashem. They're learning the entire Chabura, especially these difficult Gemaras and Parak Hamadir and Kesubos should bring Reyzel Basra Meir to an higher place in Gan Eden Shel Meilam. So we're holding towards the bottom of Ayin Hey Amid Beis. And what we're in the middle of discussing, this is going to be the second answer in understanding the stira, the contradiction in the Mishnah. The first, actually, or maybe the third answer, if you want to call it that. The first answer was Tavra, Misha Shanazu, Lo Shanazu. The one that said this did not necessarily say that in. And then we went along to have the teretz of Rabbah. And now we have the teretz of Rava. And eventually, we're going to continue with the teretz of Rav Ashi. And basically the question over here is that someone gets married and they realize after the marriage that she has a mom. And the Mishnah said two different cases. The Mishnah first discussed that if they found the mom while she was still in her father's house, then the halacha is the father has to bring a raya that the mom came after Erisin. Of course, the case being that husband and wife did Erisin and then she stayed by her father's house for another amount of months. So the father has to bring a proof that the mum came afterwards, and really, they already married when the mum was there, and therefore the husband would have to pay his wife the ksuba. But, meaning, it's nistabcha sadeyu, it's his tough luck. She grew this mum after they already did Erisin. But the Mishnah continued, that if they already entered into the husband's rishos, then the husband is the one that has to bring this raya, that it came before Erisin. And we began in the Gemara, in which the Gemara asked that there is a contradiction in the Mishnah, seemingly whether we're going with the opinion of Rav Gamliel or Rabbi Yeshua, to put it in different terms, whether we're going that this woman's cheskas, tahira, cheskas isha, that this woman has a chazaka, that she does not have a mum, whether we listen to her chazaka or not. Rav Gamliel said we go with her chazaka, Rav Yeshua said not. The problem was the Mishnah seemingly is learning like both. The first part is going to Rav Gamliel, the second part is going to Rav Yeshua, and that is where the Gemara answer. I said that backwards. The first part is going to Rav Yeshua, the second part is going to Rav Gamliel, and that is where the first teretz of Rav Eliezer was. The Mishnah has two different opinions. Don't ask such a question. Rabbah came along and Rabbah gave an answer which we dealt with yesterday, and now we're up to Rava. We're about 15 lines from the bottom of Ayin Hey Amid Beis, trying to figure out. This woman that is found to have a mum, does the husband have to pay her ksuba or not? So says Rafa, Reisha kan nimsu v'kan hayu, sevanami kan nimsa v'kan hayu. Says Rava, go back into the Mishnah and understand a little bit more. Where were the mumim found? That's what's going on over here. Were the mumim found, says Rava, in the father's possession or in the husband's possession? If the women were found in the father's possession, then we assume that these women were always here. And then the father is the one that has to bring a proof that indeed the women were not always here. Basically, this is a classical chazaka, that if we know that she had a mum, then we assume the mum was there not just at this moment, but going backwards prior. Whereas in the Sefer of the Mishnah, in the Sefer of the Mishnah, we're dealing with that where was the mum found in the husband's possession. Then we assume that is where the mum was. And the mum was not in the father's possession. And Rashi over here points out that Rava is really going within the opinion of Rav Gamliel, which is indeed the way that we paskin. That really we do listen to the chazaka of the woman. But the difference between the Reish and the Seifa is going to be where was this mum found? If it was found again in the father's household, we assume it was there prior. We assume that this woman indeed was woman with mummin, and therefore the father has to bring a raya that it was a mum that came after her marriage. Whereas if they found it in the husband's household, then we assume that is where it was found, and she did not have the mummin prior, and then the husband has to bring a proof if he does not want to pay her ksuba. That is the answer of Rava. Says Abaya. Says Abaya, if if she would have entered into her husband's rishos, said in the Sefer of the Mishnah, the husband has to bring a proof. The husband has to bring a proof that before the Erisin is when she had these women, meaning she was a woman that always had a mom, and the husband could claim, I didn't want to marry such a woman, I don't want you to pay her the ksuba. So says Abaya, that's the din of the Seifa. The Seifa said the husband has his potential to claim a mekach tois, that she had the woman prior. Ad shelo tisareis in. The obvious implication of the end of the Mishnah is that only if the husband brings the proof that when did she have these women? Before they did Erisin. But if she had the mom after Erisin, then not. But asks the Gemara, based on Rava's answer, that the entire differentiation between Reisha and Seifa is where was the mum found? Was the mum found with base Aviyah? Or was the mum found with base Baila? And if the mum was found with base Aviyah, we assume the mum was always there. If the mum was found with base Baila, we assume it was born in that moment. So asks Abaya, that has nothing to do with Erisin or not Erisin. V'amai, what's the reason that seemingly the Seifa hones in on the detail of whether there is Erisin or not? Le'makan nimsa v'kan ayu. Asks the Gemara, asks Abaya to Rava, why does it have anything to do with Erisin? Irrelevant to Erisin. We should say in the Seifa that the mum was found in the husband's house, and if the husband has to bring the proof, and if the husband brings proof, it will be irrelevant whether it was pre or post to Erisin. So Amar Le, Rava responds, Mishanis Arsa. Why is it only to bring a proof from Erisin? Misham Ikala Meimar, Chazaka and Mshaisa Bekoisal Kain Badkai. Says back Rava, no. If they already did Erisin, then bring a proof will not work. Why not? Because we have a Chazaka. We have a Chazaka that when a man does Erisin, he looks at the woman, and if she has a mum, he obviously didn't bother him. The Gemara's terminology is utilizing the mashal of a cup. Chazaka in the Mshaisa because you don't drink from a cup, unless you make sure there's nothing inside the cup. And therefore, because he did Erisin, and once he did Erisin, must be that he saw that she had these women and it didn't bother him. So the reason why in the Mishnah, the Seifa, even though the mum was found while they're already in the husband's house, the reason why the husband has been a raya that it was pre-Erisin, because if they already did Erisin, the husband basically is being Michael. The husband is saying, I don't mind that you have a mum. Ask the Gemara back 1 second. If what you're saying is true, if what you're saying is true, it should be irrelevant. Why? Because even once they did it, even if he brings a proof that she had this mom before Erisin, it still should be a problem. Because where are we holding right now? Right now, they already did Nisuin. So even though I'll bring a proof that you had this one prior, but the fact that they did Erisin, says the Gemara, is a proof that Chazaka, the husband, must have seen the mom and didn't bother him. So if the husband saw the mom and didn't bother him, what's the point? What does it help for him to bring a proof that she had the mom before Erisin? Who cares? At the end of the day, he did Erisin and he forgave and he said, I don't mind that she has a mom. Ella answers the Gemara, what are you forced to say? Amrina, in 6 lines from the bottom, it must be that no, the person does not like mumin. Even if the husband saw it, we have to assume that the husband was not happy with the fact that his wife had a mum. Then I'll tell you the same thing in the first case. So up the creek, answers Rava, just give a new answer between why this arsa makes a difference. As we said, that if the whole din in the Mishnah is dependent on whether it's in the husband's household, whether it's in the father's household, why is Erisin relevant? Ella Omar, Ella says the Gemara, 4 lines from the bottom. Misha and his arsa, once they did Erisin, Mishum Dikatarti Chazaka. Once they did Erisin, the reason why the husbands cannot bring a raya anymore, for him to bring a raya that she had a mum after Erisin is irrelevant, is why? Because at that moment, she has 2 parts of Chazaka proving your point. Number 1, she has the Chazaka of her gof that she never had a moment. And there's a second Chazaka that obviously the husband did Eris and obviously didn't bother him. And therefore he must have seen it didn't bother him. So my Amrit, what are you going to respond? What are you going to answer to the fact that we're saying that the husband has 2 chazakas? that the woman has a dual chazaka, you know what you're going to answer? Hi, a chazaka in a mevayzu mumin. You're going to respond in the last line that no. But what about the fact that the people don't like mumin? Have, says the Gemara, what that chazaka in a vacuum is turning over tayin vavam and aleph. That in a vacuum is one chazaka that is opposed by the two chazakas of the woman. That both the woman has a cheskes haguf, that she was without a mum, and as well the woman has a chazaka that the husband did eris, and obviously you saw it doesn't bother him. So the singular chazaka that a man doesn't like mumim is not enough to tamper with the dual chazaka of the isha, and that's the reason why bringing a proof out there is not going to work. Now the Gemara elaborates and explains what we just said. Before Erisin, then she has then to say she has chazaka lo yikalamim, you can't say so what are you going to say? You're going to say that the father has chazaka, that a person doesn't drink from a kabel and came bald case. Obviously the husband forgave her from having these moments. So now that there's only one chazaka, I'll flip it and say chazaka and advise my so says Rava, that's the reason why after Erisin the husband does not need to pay. So the reason why Erisin comes into the Mishnah explains Rava, really it all has to do with where was the mum found. Was the mum found by Beis Aviyah? Was the mum found by Beis Bayil? Why does the Mishnah bring the fact of Erisin? Because once there is Erisin, then the woman will de facto win because she has a dual chazaka that her cheskes kashrus, like Rav Gamliel holds, woman always has a cheskes taira. And number two, the fact that a husband, the chazaka that he looked into it and it didn't bother him. So that is how Rava answers up the steer in the Mishnah, again, explaining like Rabbi Gamliel, that's the Psak Halacha, that we do believe the cheskes taira of the Isha. But what's the reason why it's a difference is because was the mum found in the Beis Aviyah, then the father has to bring a raya in the Reisha. Was it found in the Beis Bayila, then the husband has to be a raya in the Seifa. Why did the Mishnah bring in the detail of Erisin? Was to talk and determine whether the woman will indeed have this dual chazaka or not. Rav Ashi Amar comes like Rav Ashi 6 lines down with a third shot in our Mishnah. Says Rav Ashi, you know the difference is Reisha mana la'abba biyadach, v'seifa mana li biyadach. Says Rav Ashi, in the Reisha, where do they find the mum in the father's house? So that's equivalent to someone saying, you owe my father a mana. Why? Because since the girl is still in her father's house, she only did a Erisin. So if she now gets divorced after Erisin, who collects the cash? The father. So who is the claimant for the father? So this is a scenario that is similar to Mana La'aba Biyadach, that she's claiming on behalf of the father. Whereas the Seifa, she already is in Bereshus Baila, she already did Nisu, and she's fully married. So in that case, she's claiming for herself. Mana Li Biyadach. And because in the Seifa, she's claiming for herself, therefore her own personal Cheskas Haguf combines with her claim. Whereas in the Reisha, it does not, because the claim is not for herself, but rather for her father. Eisvei Ravacha Breder Ravav Rav Ashi as Ravacha. Ma'ir Meir b'mum naruyin lavai imam beis Aviyah shalav lavi rayo. Ask Ravacha. The Brisa says that Rameir agrees in a case that the mum is the type to come with her from her father's house, the type of mum that she had all along. Then Rameir agrees shalav lavi rayo. The father has to bring a rayo. But ask the Gemara based on the teretz that we just said of Rav Ashi v'amak. Very good that it's a mum that's normal to have been there, but still she's claiming mana li biyadcha. She's claiming for herself, and therefore her chesed haguf combines with her claim. Answers the Gemara, hacha b'may askinon b'yaseris. We're talking about over here with a mum like an extra limb, an extra finger, which of course was there prior to the Erisin. Yiseris Mai. Ask the Gemara, Yiseris Mai Raya Maisi. So what Raya can the father bring to say that what? Of course she always had this finger. So what's the Raya? The Mishnah says the Av could bring a proof. Explains the Gemara, Raya derav in Ifaisu. You're right, he can't bring a proof that she didn't have this finger, because she for sure did. But the father could bring a proof that the husband saw it, and was nefayis and it didn't bother him. So those are the three terutzim, Rabba, Rav, and Rav Ashi, of explaining the seeming contradiction of the Mishnah, of the Reisha of Seifa being Rav Gamliel and Rav Yeshua, and not resorting to the first teretz, Rav Eliezer, Rav Tavra, Mishashanazu, Loishanazu. Continues the Gemara, a little bit of an easier Gemara now. 6 lines from the bottom of the 2 dots. Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Shmuel Machlef Bara b'Chamar. If someone is seeming sounds a bit random, exchanges a cow for a donkey, umashach bala chamar es hapara. So I give you my cow and you give me your donkey, and you go and you do mashicha, you pull to yourself my cow. And as I'm about to go and walk over and take your donkey, the chamar dies. So you did a kinyan, you did a mashicha, you pulled my cow, but I did not have a moment to pull your donkey. What is the din, says the Brisa? It's upon you to bring a proof that the chamar, the donkey, was alive when you did the mashicha of the cow. Vitana, tuna, kala. And the raya to this is our Mishnah of the kala. So our Mishnah says, the Gemara says Rav Yehuda Amar Shmuel Zaraya, that in the case where we're exchanging cow for donkey, and you pulled cow, and I didn't get a chance to pull donkey, that you have to bring a proof that while you pulled the cow, the donkey was alive, is a raya from our Mishnah. Says the Gemara, hey kala, which case in the Mishnah? Ilema, if you're going to tell me as we turn over to, I involve Omed base. If you're going to tell me kala base aviyah, if you're going to tell me it's the case of the kala, the Reisha, the kala in the house of her father's house, but I'll tell you, midami asam, I see avrayom. In the Mishnah, what was going on? The father brings a proof, umapik, and he makes the husband pay. So the father's bringing the proof, and he's forcing the husband to pay the ksuba. But in this case of the cow and the donkey is not the same thing. The balachamar, you're bringing the proof, and you're keeping the cow. So what's the raya from the Mishnah that the raya allows you to extract money to this price that's just allowing you to keep money? So Amar Rav Abba, 3 lines down, you're right. Says Rav Abba, kalu beis chamiyah. We're talking about the case of the bride in her father-in-law's house. And that case, the Tana still requires the husband to bring a proof in order to keep the money. Ask the Gemara the same kasha, vakati loy dami. What's the proof that's being brought in the Mishnah? The husband brings a proof, and it destroys, it's a mara, it weakens the chazaka of the father. So again, it's not the same mechanics. Over here, the Baal Chamar is bringing a raya in order to keep the cow in his possession. So a new case. The case is for the raya to the din of Shmuel, so the case of the kala in her father's house, ule kedushin, and it's referring to the money given for kedushin, which the Mishnah didn't really discuss. The Mishnah was more honing in on the fact that there is a moment, therefore do you have to pay the ksuba or not? But says the Gemara, what is the status of the money for the kedushin? The father explains the Gemara has to bring a raya to keep the cash. Veloy tema, says the Gemara. Don't say I'll leave it to my kedushin lav l'tibuin. No, this is machlekes whether kedushin is l'tibuin literally means is sunk, is given without any strings attached. Elafil mandam kedushin l'tibuin. Even according to Mandamar that says when you give kedushin you never have any strings, you're not going to take it back. On immediately kedushin vadai. That's only if the form of kedushin, which is a certainty, is not a doubt. Kedushin does ma'isi raya any lo ma'isi. Eloi. So says the Gemara, we don't have a proof from that case as well. We don't have a proof in the case of Kedushin L'tibuin either. Says the, incorrect. For the fact that the Mishnah said that the father brings a raya to prove that the Kedushin was good, and then the father keeps the money that he wanted to give for Kedushin. This is the raya to Shmuel, that the owner of the donkey brings a raya that the cow was alive at the time of the transaction, so that the donkey was alive when he pulled the cow to keep the cow. So that's the raya. Mesa asked the Gemara, if you find the machat, you find the needle in the wall of the animal's stomachs, the Beis HaKoisa, is literally the reticulum. Mitzarech, like Sheiruf, the needle's only sticking out one side. It's kosher mishtei sadim treifa. Nimzal el karetam. But if on this needle you find a dot of blood, biyodua shulevnei shchita, then you know that when did the animal get this hole in it? When did this trephus happen in the cow? It happened before the shchita, and therefore the animal is a treifa, not kosher. If you don't find this dot of blood, but usually and therefore it would be kosher. Hoglad bi'amaka continues the brayso. If a scab was over the wound, it must be that when did this happen? This happened 3 days before the shchita, and that's the reason why there's a scab right now. And that case, if the butcher bought the animal within 3 days of the shchita, he can tell the seller, I want the money back because it is a treifa. Lo yogded piyamakav, there's no scab. Then alav haraya. So says the Gemara, what's the kasha? V'yoiv tabach dami. Now in the last case, if the tabach of the butcher already gave money to the person who was selling it, so what's happening? What's happening is that he's bringing a raya to extract the money and make the seller give it back to him. It's claiming that it was a treifa. But according to Shmuel v'amai, according to Shmuel, the original owner of the seller should bring a raya and keep the money. Again, so the mechanics are not perfectly equatable to our case. Answers the Gemara, an interesting case. The case is that the butcher didn't get paid for the animal. Says the Gemara, my Posca, how do you know that? Don't listen to these rules. The brother Shmuel says, rather, this is what Shmuel says. Wherever the suffix comes out, he is one that has to bring the raya. And we have a raya from our brayso. So Meisvei, again, the same kasha, says, if the tabach did not give money yet, again, he's bringing a raya and he's extracting the money. Where did this suffix happen? In the possession of the butcher. So the Yav Tabach Dami. Says Mar again, the case is that the tabach gave money, the exact opposite. Oh my Pascha, how do you know that against them? The most come to Yav Inish, Zuzi Lav Inish Achiyus. Says the Gemara, you know why? Because the normal thing is you don't give over your animal until you actually pay for the cash. And that's the reason why the Bryce said that the Kimta, the cases where he already paid, it's not a Shar Kimta because that is the normal case. We'll pick it up from the two dots on the Chachamim in the next